Hi, welcome to another edition of Resonate with Edgehill and Davis. I'm Owen Edgehill.
And I'm David Davis.
And today we've got a phenomenal guest here by the name of Vicky Kate. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you. Thank
Hi,
you
Vicky.
both.
Good to see you.
Thank
Cool.
you. Lovely to be here.
I've heard a great deal about you, Vicky.
All good stuff. All good
All
stuff.
good stuff.
Yeah. So, how's things? You all right?
Yeah, I had a bit of a flu thing going on, but...
Flu or cold?
Okay, cold.
Right.
You know I'm a man, I'm trying to exaggerate stuff.
Get it right. Get it right. Cool. Yeah, I've had that as well, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. But you're all good though.
All good, all good.
Vic, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I've managed to escape it so far.
Have you?
So,
Fingers crossed.
Good. Yeah,
touch
keep
wood.
it that way, shall we?
Touch wood.
yeah.
Okay, let's get started, as they say. So, on this edition, this is the second part of the Narcissist Part 1 that Dee and I did just before Christmas. And we've got Vicky in. I've known Vicky for quite a while, and she's a good soul, as we say. And I just thought we'd just get her in to get her perspective on narcissism from her experiences and just her perspective. So that's kind of where we're going to go with it.
Yeah, which is such an important subject.
It really is.
Such an important subject.
So what I want to do is basically, we had a conversation, Dee and I, about our perception of narcissism, and there were a few people saying that narcissism could be a trait coming from somebody from a young age, brought up in an environment of narcissistic parents, or it could be a person who's not that confident in themselves, and therefore they think that being around a nice person, even though that nice person is manipulative, that nice person must be alright, so that's why they've got to attach themselves to that particular person.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different degrees to it. So I just want to get your take on it, Vicky, in terms of whether you've had experiences with a narcissist, or in your perspective, in terms of what you think and what are your views on it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a coach as well, and I've had clients that have had narcissistic relationships.
Sorry, what kind of coaching do you do?
So I do all sorts of coaching. It's quite spiritual coaching, and
Right.
it's about people becoming more self-aware
Yeah.
and helping to tune into that intuition. So I use Reiki a lot,
Oh, wow.
and yoga a lot. So all of those sort of ways to try and meditation to try and help people tap into that sort of self-awareness.
Right.
So I have had quite a few clients with it. Plus, I think it's quite interesting that you're saying so. So I did do a lot of study into it, and there's an amazing lady, I think it's Dr. Nadine, and she's like the leading person on narcissism.
Right.
And so there are different types of narcissism, which is why it's so confusing. So you've got the grandiose narcissist, which is the person that's very in love with themselves and wants to make a big impact. And they're usually, that you said in the last part 1, you say that they're usually quite successful, and they're those grandiose types of narcissists because they've got the right traits,
Right.
because they're extremely motivated, they know exactly what they want, they don't care who gets in their way,
Right.
they're going to get it, and
Yeah.
they usually do. And so you'll probably know a lot of, you've probably had bosses and maybe that type of person in the past.
Yeah.
And then you have more the sort of vulnerable narcissist, which is a bit more of the person that's had more sort of obvious trauma through their lives, and so it's always very much the poor me,
Right.
and that's their way of getting in, being that victim is the way of getting that support from someone, because, you know, especially in, if narcissisms usually attract the people pleaser, and they attract that person that wants to help them.
Right.
So if you've got, especially if you've got the vulnerable narcissist, that you're just like, oh, let me help you, I'll do this, I'll do that. And there's this lovely combination of toxicity that creates that sort of bond.
Right.
But then the other thing that I was going to just add to this was about following on from your last discussion, and you've obviously had comments from your last podcast, was about the family side, because I think that's the biggest trap. So one of the questions that you were sort of puzzling over was, what is it that attracts people and why do they stay into these relationships? And I think it's familiarity. 100% is familiarity. So usually you'll find that people that are in those relationships have had it in their childhood, and it's hardwired. So they don't know it because it's very hard, and it's very much a very modern way that we can understand this type of behaviour.
Right.
So, but growing up, so for me, for example, my actual family had narcissism in it. I wouldn't say there was an actual narcissistic, apart from, actually, yes, there was generational. My nan was definitely a narcissist.
Right.
If you could like go back then and diagnose, she's got all of the traits. But of course, consequently, there's a massive sort of wave then of those sort of traits that came into the family dynamic.
Right.
Like the love bombing, the sense of validation, and all of the on-off. And so for me, as a child, if I'm getting that, as an adult, it's very hard for me to understand what love is.
Right.
So for me, I'm just going to say, oh, well, this is really familiar. I got this in my childhood. So for me, this is love.
So that's your attraction, basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you know by the time we get to the age of 2, we've got 75% of our attraction built through attachments for who we're going to end up with in relationships.
Wow.
I knew it was a high figure, but I didn't realise it was so high.
Yeah. So it's really difficult when you're in that relationship to then say, actually, oh, this person's a bad person for me, so I'm going to go. It's just so complex.
Yeah.
And I personally think a lot of child therapy, going back into learning about the inner child, is personally, for me, has really helped me on my journey.
Right.
I think there's I think it's a specific type of therapy to try and undo that dynamic and try and understand what love is as a healthy model.
Right, it's a good point. And we always talk about it on this show, Vicky, in terms of, you know, it's primarily all about from when we're children and how we're raised and the environment that we're raised in that kind of sets us up. And because I believe we live in a sick society, that just gets us to focus on the material aspects of life and not in terms of our emotions. When we get older, we go out into this world and we meet people and we just automatically think, well, she's all right or whatever, and we don't actually think what's driving that, what's behind it. And it could well be, as you mentioned, that generational thing in terms of what a person's been used to in growing up, and all of a sudden they find themselves attracted to a type of person and they can't extricate themselves out of that situation because that's all they know, as you just mentioned. So then it just goes on and on and on and on. But for me, it's a case of, and I'm glad you brought that up in terms of what you mentioned, it's about an individual realising that fact. Most people either beat themselves up about it, why can't I get out of this situation? As you mentioned about the people pleasing, it's going to be alright, so that'll be okay, but not realising that it's a wrong relationship. So how does a person get to that point where they realise that it's a wrong relationship if they've only just been used to that all their lives?
And especially as because you are used to that, that's something that you obviously need within you,
Yes, yeah.
rightly or wrongly. So how can you just cut your need off just to kind of just to get away from a narcissist? How do you cut the need off that you believe you need, because it's the need that you've always had, to be able to kind of separate the two? How do you do that?
I think it is different for everybody, but I think it's, and I think when you've got children, it's really difficult. If you've got children with a narcissist, I'm very fortunate that my marriages and my son, I haven't got any of that dynamic. So, but I think it is a very tricky thing, because then obviously the narcissist used the children as pawns in that sort of, and it's a very emotional sort of minefield. But I think separate from that, the only way is getting them out of your life completely, because they will try. They're so manipulative, and I know, well, I know from experience, but also sort of looking into it more, that they actually do study, because they study human behaviour, because they want to, they're predators.
Who the narcissist
The
does?
narcissist.
Right.
So they want to understand how to get what they want, because they're so driven by their need, whether it's validation or usually they need somebody to either make them look good and that could be, well, it's usually always that, but it could be like visually, or it could be that they have a good status. That's usually a thing because they like high status, or it could be that that person's got money. That's obviously another thing. So so these people are predators, and they're looking for that somebody that can make them feel really good about themselves, and you know, and so that sort of means that it's quite a game. So they've got to actually do a bit of study. And so the particular person that I got involved with had actually gone to therapy so that he could learn all the terms.
Wow.
And so the gaslighting worked beautifully because he'd learnt it and he'd studied it and just knew how to sort of...
Pure manipulation, isn't it?
Awful. It's like, when you're not like that,
Yeah.
it's quite shocking, isn't it?
Because again, in my head, the narcissist is something like it's an inbuilt, whether a born trait or something you've learned from an early age, not the fact that you'd actually study your craft, because that's what it sounds like, to become even better in that craft, and to be able to read the individuals that you want to control. Because it is about control, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think what you were saying in the last podcast about them being very intelligent, I think usually they are intelligent, and so that intelligence lends itself to manipulation techniques because they have that ability to do so. So it's it's very, so for the person that ends up with them, they're usually an empath. So they're very.
What does that mean?
So an empath is when somebody's very naturally their first go-to is very empathetic, and they tend to be the people pleasers.
Okay.
So they tend to be the people that put everybody first, and they're sort of usually also, got unhealed wounds.
Right.
And so if they've come from a background where they've had trauma in their childhood or narcissism, then they've usually been built with shame.
Right.
So shame is their number one go-to.
Yeah.
And the narcissist knows that, so they see this person, they think, great, I can just shame them all the time and put them back in their box.
Gaslighting type.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And the shame is, I don't know if you know Brené Brown, she's amazing, and she's a key on vulnerability and shame.
Right.
It's a massive part of it's the poison in our society, in my opinion. It's the thing that's been used through generations to keep people where they want them to be, and make them full of shame.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful and sad place. So I think, I think understanding that, so by doing the work on themselves to start to love themselves,
there you go.
then that's where
that's the key to, isn't it?
Which is a lot of the topics
revert
to when we are discussing various things.
Yeah.
It's about loving yourself, isn't
Right.
it?
it is. And
Internal.
healing.
Yeah.
Healing that shame that actually doesn't need to shape you. That it's just something that's been put in there that actually you've got nothing to be shameful about. Your whole presence in this world is a beautiful addition, and everybody has such a magic about them. So it's so sad when I have clients that obviously have this weight on them of shame.
Yeah.
It's sad.
I suppose going back to the question though, how do you start to get rid of that shame? How do you start to kind of control within yourself that this is what you've got to do for the good and benefit of yourself, or indeed if you have a family, small family, where do you start, and kind of how is the journey onwards from that?
I think it's recognising that fact that you've actually got. So in my situation, my predator came during lockdown. So obviously, the government made it so easy for him. Cut off family, cut off friends, make people feel really lonely and vulnerable and scared.
Yes.
Yeah. And then add that to a dating app, which is obviously a predator's dream.
Yes.
That'd be my advice. Don't use dating apps. Really, I've met a lot of people that now I know the signs that I'm just like, whoa, there's a lot out there.
Right.
And it's perfect for them. Perfect.
Absolutely.
To do the love bombing. So for me, the recipe was all there. It was all fine, and for it to start.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's, sorry, I'm going on a...
Good.
I just suddenly thought. And then another thing that you were saying, your last one is about intuition, following your intuition.
Yes.
So that is obviously the first part to not go down that route, isn't it?
Right.
And this is where I think dating apps are dangerous, because your intuition is an energy, and you can really pick that up. You can pick it up on the phone or by messages, but very hard.
Yeah.
You need to be quite tuned into that intuition. Your natural intuition is when you meet people, you pick up on their energy, you read them, and then you can just sort of discern and just say, whoa, that's a bad one, I'm not going near that person.
Yeah.
But when you've got these apps, they're doing all the love bombing before you've even had that connection with that person.
Wow.
So they're hooking you in before you've even got a chance.
There you go.
So by the time you meet them, and then your body's like, whoa, Vicky, run! By then you're like, oh, but they told me that I was so amazing a couple of weeks ago, and you're hooked.
It just locks in there,
Yeah.
aren't you? You really are.
At that point, it's kind of, you're already down that track.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
But I think, going back to your question, sorry, I think so that's the beginning part, but I think it is that journey. For me, it was my friends that I did still have a connection with, and they were like, whoa, hang on a minute, what? what? And plus also, I have a son, and so the behaviour, because obviously he was living with me, and his behaviour, I could hear, my son was hearing it, and automatically that sort of was like, oh, hang on a minute.
Right.
And I was like saying, no, get out now. I'm not having that.
Yeah.
And so it just started, it's the people I love that sort of helped me sort of come back to who I am.
Right.
And not be in that position. But I think that is very different to what a lot of people have to go through, because I understand that it's much more hardwired for a lot of people. So it's about getting support and therapy and trying to find that connection to yourself again and understanding. And once you see that, you just got to put your faith in those that want to help you and love you.
Yeah.
And know that you can get out of it, but you have to get out of it.
Without a doubt. And again, it's that realisation that the reason why an individual is like that is because of how they were raised and the environment that they were in. That's the first thing. But we always talk about it, in terms of doing the work on yourself, trying to become a better person, seeing yourself warts and all, and then you've got the capacity to see through somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in that capacity, then it'd be like, right, well, I know why I'm attracted to a narcissist, because of the environment that I was raised in. So now when I'm out and about, I can spot that.
Yeah.
With that intuition, but I can also spot it with my level of awareness now.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore, when that situation comes, I can go that way or that way. But ignorance is bliss, isn't it? When we don't know anything, it's cool because we didn't know.
Yeah.
But when we do get the information, as we talk about it, when we do get that information in terms of we know about it, but we still find ourselves going down that particular road with a narcissist, then who's to blame?
Well, I suppose it's a sense, you are getting that sense of responsibility, but also it's about evolution. So you might not be on that paradigm of evolution that you can actually say, actually, I'm ready now to make that change.
Right.
You might need time to heal some extra wounds and some particular therapies to really go along that line. So I think it's a difficult one. You might have that knowledge, but then you might still fall into that trap,
Right.
because there's just a learning curve for you, and it's just like you haven't quite closed that loop. There's something else that you need to address
Right.
that you've not realised.
Yeah.
And so I'd say I just look at it as a mirror.
Yeah.
So whenever you're in that situation and you're just like, why am I here again? What have I done? Rather than beating yourself up, it's like, okay, I've obviously got another lesson here. I'm not quite where I thought I was.
Right.
Shame, but I've got this. I've got this.
Yeah.
And that's, using it constantly as that learning.
And that support chain that you've got as well.
Yeah.
Don't be fearful of using that support or having that
Definitely.
support around you.
Yeah.
Because I suppose when you do, again, you can tell us your experiences, but when you do eventually say no to that narcissist, I'm pretty sure they don't stop there, do they?
Yeah, no.
No.
Mine turned into a stalker, and that is quite a common sort of
Right.
thing that happens
Oh.
because they do not want to lose that battle. And if you've taken control and come out of that, they're just like, right, I've got to find other ways to intimidate this person
Right.
because I'm not going to be beaten, because they've got so much self-importance that
Yeah.
they really think that the world does revolve around them. It's not even just like a saying, they actually think they've got this godlike sort of thing,
Right.
which is part of the attraction to begin with. It's like, whoa, this person's amazing. But actually then you realise they're not, and it's just this, illusion.
Mm.
But they still believe it, they desperately believe it. So
Right.
if you're taking control, like you were saying, and leaving that, they're just like, whoa, hang on, I need to
Up the anti-type thing.
yeah, so I'll just hang around this person and I'll make them feel fearful and
Right.
it got
Yeah.
it was over a year, I think it was, and police were involved and everything. So it's a serious thing with these really extreme
Yeah.
narcissists, and that's why it's so hard. And I really do understand that it's hard to unhook. But actually, it's just, a smokescreen. It's all an illusion.
Right.
It's all what they're trying to project. They're trying to get you to feel fearful and get the shame, raise the shame, so then you'll come and say, oh, actually, can you come back and look after me? Because and it's a really strange sort of, because people do, that's what happens.
Yeah.
And, I had lots of amazing people actually in the police that were really helpful. And they were saying it's really common then to then go back out with someone that's stalking them because they need somebody to help them because they're scared,
Right.
and that person's looked after them,
Yes.
and so then they go back out with them
Yeah.
because they're just like, oh, well, actually, and it shows they must really love me because they're hanging around all the time and following me.
Right. Yes.
So that's love, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Get it.
Very, very complicated, but
Yeah.
it is.
Have you ever thought that you could, sorry to interrupt, but have you ever thought that you could change the narcissist behaviour?
Yeah.
You have?
Oh god, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that was part of the
And can it be done?
attraction. Yeah. No. From everything I've researched, I've read lots of books on it now. And no, absolutely not. They say somebody that's on the actual spectrum where they've got the disorder, which is very hard to diagnose because a narcissist won't obviously willingly want to get diagnosed.
Right. Yes.
So, but they say that they think it's quite high statistics, and that person that is in that has that disorder, it's almost like a sociopath. It's very hard for them to then reprogram.
Right.
It could be from severe trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just
Right.
it's something that I don't know that would probably need really huge. The doctor Nadine says that she has worked with a couple that have wanted to take responsibility, but she said that's out of thousands and thousands that she's worked with.
Mm.
So she said it's
Right.
just, if you go from a place that they can't be changed,
Yeah.
that's the safest option, because then you keep yourself safe, knowing
Right.
that
Yeah.
just give up. Don't
Yeah.
waste your energy on that. That's
It's not possible.
No.
Mm.
No.
Just to bring this thing down for a landing, Vicky, you mentioned love bombing. How does that? What do you mean by love bombing for those who aren't aware of it? In terms of what is it? Just gifts and what is it?
Yeah, I mean they usually tune into your love language. So for some people it would be gifts, for some people it's more the affirmations,
Right.
and they can just work out quite quickly what makes you feel really good, and then they just use that a lot. So they make you feel great and give you lots of compliments.
Right.
But I grew up with this actually, so it is. I'm very used to having a lot of affection all at once, and then it stops, and it's quite used in a sort of a way that's for their needs.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so there's nothing actually behind it, but at the time for the person that's probably enjoying the validation, we all like a bit of validation.
Of course we do. Yeah.
Then I think that's it, but you can spot it afterwards because you realise actually
You're tuned, you
Yeah.
tune into
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's not real. That's
Right.
not real. You can't love me after 3 weeks. That's ridiculous.
So would you say then that the key part of realising that realising why you are with a narcissist, the key part of it is doing the work on yourself and realising that this trait might have come from your upbringing, your environment.
Yeah.
Start with that first.
Yes, definitely.
Would you say that?
Yeah, and not be afraid to
Yeah.
go back there, because if you have got the shame, it's quite hard
Right.
because you feel very protective about your family, obviously. So it is quite a difficult route, but don't worry about that, because actually it's about you being healthy and having healthy relationships and having a happy life. So it's worth visiting that
Right.
to understand yourself better.
And a lot of people, I include myself back in the day, a lot of people always want to be in a relationship because they think that being in a relationship will bring them some sort of salvation.
It makes them whole. Makes
them whole.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And I think that's the key as well, Vicky, isn't it? It's cool to be on your own.
Yeah, it's
cool
great.
to be single.
Yeah.
And wait for the right opportunity. And while you're waiting for that right opportunity, do the work on yourself, right?
Totally.
To get to the point where you're going to be able to spot that good person or that not so good person.
Yeah, and you've got more energy and time to focus on yourself when you're single, so that you can heal and get into that lovely place that you're ready to meet the right person.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Good person.
Cool. That's it from me.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say thank you, Vicky, for sharing.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Your issues with, but your journey with narcissism rather than issues, because they're not your issues, they're someone else's. Until you found within yourself, this is what I've got to do to escape it. So thank you for sharing that, and I'm pretty sure with the audience out there that you also would like to say thank you, Vicky, for highlighting that, and thank you for the work that you do within the community. Because I think that's terrific. I mean, where can people find you?
I've got a website, vickykate.com. Nice and easy, Vicky
Nice
Kate.
and easy.
Terrific.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I've really
Been a great
enjoyed
session.
it. I've been honoured to be your guest.
I think we enjoyed it too, our first guest.
Indeed.
Thank you
Need to
so
come
much.
back on again.
Yeah, oh, love
definite,
to.
for definite.
Thank you.
And until next time, it's bye from me.
And bye from me. Obviously, the few words I'd like to say is please like, if you did like this particular episode, share amongst your friends, family, colleagues, and also please subscribe. From now and here, goodbye.
Bye from me.